Hello and welcome to Run It Back on the Raptors Republic Network. I'm your host, Zulfi, joined by Kyle Ramnarine as always, and we're back to recap another week of Raptors action, update our roster power rankings, and outline the week ahead. Now, there's lots to go over as we recap the first week of the new look Raptors. So, with that being said, let's run it back. All right, now time to recap the Raptors schedule. And the Toronto Raptors played 4 games through the past 7 days, one at home before hitting the road for a West Coast road trip. Now, game one of the week took place at Scotiabank Arena all the way back on New Year's Day. The Raptors took on the Cleveland Cavaliers, and a notable part of that game was it was the debuts of newly acquired Emmanuel Quickley and RJ Barrett. The big question going in was where the two would fit into the lineup, and coach Darko Rajakovic wasted no time getting the two involved as they were immediately inserted into the starting lineup, and the move seemed to pay off. The first basket for the Raptors was a Barrett pass into a Quickley three. The two ended up finishing with 19 and 14 points respectively. And the crowd was also electric, sold out. You could tell there was a new energy surrounding the fan base, and the team was even acting like it early. Toronto scored 41 points in the first quarter, the most they'd scored in the opening quarter all season. Raptors built up a lead as big as 19 points midway through the second, but the Cavs, without Darius Garland and Evan Mobley to their credit, did make it interesting later on. It was largely thanks to their bench. Karis LeVert dropped 31 off the pine, and Sam Merrill, I don't know either, added 16 points on 4 of 8 shooting from deep. A Max Strus triple even put the Cavs up early in the fourth quarter, but the Raps got to the line a bunch towards the end of the game and were able to hold on for a 124-121 win. All 5 Raptors starters put up over 14 points, led by Pascal, who dropped 36. Scotty had 20, and Jakob Poeltl also looked really impressive with a double-double and 3 blocks as well. Game 2 of the week was also the first of a 6-game West Coast road trip for the new look Raptors. Betting that going into Memphis, a place known for its southern eats, the new core of the Raps was given their first nickname, Spicy BBQ. That's Spicy P. Siakam, Barnes, Barrett, and Quickley. And Game 2 of the Spicy BBQ era started similarly to the last, as the first half was all Toronto. Quickley looked much more comfortable on the night, curling around screens, stepping back, and hitting threes at an efficient 5 for 8 clip, and skipping after just about every 3 he hit. What an awesome celly, by the way. The Raptors outscored the Grizzlies 32-19 in the second quarter and dropped 30 plus in each of the first 3 frames. Toronto took a 17-point lead into the fourth, but the Grizzlies went on a 16-4 run a couple minutes in, and like the Cavs game, made it a lot closer than it probably should have been. Despite the game getting to within a 5-point margin, the Raptors held on thanks to the likes of Siakam and Barnes, who had 24 and 20 each, and Schroeder, who dropped 16 off the bench and earned the right to close out the game in place of RJ Barrett. Toronto picked up a 116-111 win, their second win in a row, the first time they've won back-to-back games since November 22nd and November 24th. Now you know what that means going into the Raptors-Kings game. The Raptors were playing for their coach Darko Rajakovic-hosted pizza party. Toronto was trying to win 3 consecutive games for the first time all season, but things did not start out well for Toronto. They struggled handling Domantas Sabonis, who was running laps around Jakob Poeltl as he put up 12 points in the first quarter. Sabonis ended up finishing up with a triple-double as well. Now, it didn't help that the Kings could not miss from deep in the first half. Sacramento shot 14 of 27 from beyond the arc through the first 2 quarters, led by Keegan Murray, who went 4 of 4 from downtown, hitting some ridiculous shots. Now, the Raptors allowed the Kings to score 77 points in the first half, the most they've allowed through a half against any team this season. However, the Raptors did show a ton of life, though, in the second half, and it was largely thanks to one major adjustment by Darko Rajakovic. He took Scotty away from defending point of attack players like De'Aaron Fox and had him guard Sabonis instead, and let Schroeder do the defensive guarding against the small guards of Sacramento. Now, Scotty was able to roam around and disrupt passing lanes and just do his usual Scotty special stuff on defense. Toronto, despite being down as many as 23 points midway through the third quarter, used their small ball lineup, which allowed them to outscore Sacramento by almost 20 points the rest of the way. The Raptors, after letting the Kings take 27 threes in the first half, held them to just 1 attempt in the final 9 minutes of the game. They cut the lead down as little as 2 points, 129-127 off a Quickley 3, but unfortunately they couldn't get any closer than that. Although the NBA did review one of Quickley's final 3-point attempts and deemed that it was indeed a foul and should have been awarded free throws, but alas, Toronto couldn't complete the comeback as they fell 135-130, the first L of the BBQ era, and no pizza party. And then that brought us to Sunday, when the Raptors ended the week by taking on the Golden State Warriors. And Toronto was treating the matchup just like it was the NBA Finals and not a game between 2 11 seeds in the East and the West. Toronto put up 76 points in the first half, and it was largely thanks to 2 things. One, Scottie and the rest of the team limited Steph to start the game, and pretty much all night because Steph finished with just 9 points. The team also kept hunting Stephen Curry in the post and abusing mismatches through Scottie and Pascal. Now talk about 2019 flashbacks. Quickley looked like prime Kyle Lowry as he kept making the right reads, showing his PG touch. IQ finished with 10 assists on the night. He had 9 in the first half. Now the other bigger reason they were doing so well was Rowan Alexander Barrett. Yeah, RJ, or should I say, Star J, went nuts. Mississauga's finest put up 26 points in the first half and dropped 5 triples as the Raptors led by 27 points at the break. Golden State did make it interesting like some of these other games after the break, making it a 7-point game at one point, but they had no way to stop the Raptors offense, or rather, the Raptors' Canadian offense. Barrett, along with fellow Canuck Chris Boucher, carried in the second half. The duo played 20 minutes together in the game and were a plus 15. Boucher finished with 17 and 9 off the bench, while Barrett had a season-high 37 to go with 6 boards and 6 assists. His 37 points was the second most ever put up by a Canadian on the Raptors. And also, re-shout out to Boucher, who owns 3 of the top 5 performances in that category, and the record for 38 points by a Canadian Raptor in 2021. Does anybody remember that game? Either way, Raptors win 133 to 118 after some garbage time. And fun fact, Thad Young made a 3, and that 3 was more than Steph Curry made all game. Just the second time Steph has been held to without a 3 in a game this season. Weird stuff. But recapping this week, your stats leaders also remain the same. Another 7 days go by. Siakam is your top scorer. He's averaging around 22 a game now. Barnes and Schroeder still lead rebounding and assists. The team went 3-1 throughout the week and are sit at 15 and 21 overall, keeping 11th spot in the East. They did jump up 1 spot, so shout out to them. Now, Kyle, I know that was a lot of information, a lot of stuff, especially because this new look Raptors has done so much throughout this first week. But I'm curious to know from you, what are your initial thoughts and reactions to week 1 of the spicy BBQ era?
I think just like everybody else too, I'm excited to watch this team from game to game. Like just that first game, I thought it was going to be a lot of like, we're going to figure out the lineups. We're going to figure out if Quickley is starting or RJ is starting, or if one of them are coming off the bench, is Dennis Schroeder coming off the bench? Like, how are we going to do these lineups? But just right off the bat, Quickley hitting the threes and then kind of like sparking a whole new life into the fan base, into this team. It just got me excited for this team in the future, just seeing how Quickley can play his shifty game, the pick and rolls, the floaters, RJ Barrett playing straight bully ball, him in transition he's been showing flashes of being elite in transition, when sometimes he deals with the tunnel vision, but when he finds the open man or just takes it straight to the rim, it's incredible. And just watching that first Cavs game, from each game this week, just going forward and forward, it just made me excited for the future. The spacing looks great. Like before, we would never see when one of the Raptors would be going to the paint or something, you'd get a help defender, but now they're worried about leaving someone open for the 3, right? So we don't have mainly that problem anymore. And it feels like the team just has so many more options to go to on offense. I'm such a huge fan of Quickley's game now. He's giving me young Tyrese Maxey up and coming vibes, that he can be our Maxey, instead of getting torched by him, like we have someone to torch other teams. So it's going to be great. And he can hit floaters too. This is crazy, bro. A point guard with a bag. This is wild, bro. Like, so just seeing these guys play together, and RJ, him coming into his own game, getting better each game, and just dropping 37 that game against the Warriors. It was incredible, and I'm just hyped to see how this team progresses too. But one thing I want to ask you too is like, do you see this team getting better from here, or how can this team get better from here? Because obviously we know they're not in contending state right now, but what can this team do? Because right now I think after seeing the trade, I'm kind of off the whole trade Siakam wave. I'm kind of extend him, but maybe move some other pieces on the team. What about you?
Yeah, I think it's a good question because a lot of people are probably thinking the same thing right now, because 3-1 over this week is no joke against some teams that have serious aspirations. And the Kings, the Cavs are a solid team, even though they did have some injuries. Memphis, they have Ja back. They're obviously trying to be more serious despite their record. And the Warriors, again, they aren't doing so well, but the caliber of players on that team. So I don't take that lightly, and I think this Raptors team show that they can actually compete. They may need to fix something around the fringes, but even the bench is doing a lot better, and we'll talk about it in the power rankings. But guys like Dennis Schroeder look much more complete off the bench. Gary Trent Jr.'s role has picked up a little bit. Chris Boucher has been more solid, and I think to your point, the biggest thing has been that roles are clearer now. People don't feel like they need to do more than they are because they don't have to make up for this deficiency in this roster or this construction. The skill sets aren't overlapping anymore. RJ Barrett and Emmanuel Quickley address so many things. Again, you talked about RJ in transition. this team has all the makings to be really good in transition, and they have been throughout the whole season, but they just weren't doing it. But then a guy like RJ comes in, and all he does is he pushes the pace in transition all the time. Either he's receiving a pass and bullying somebody to get in the lane, or he's running the break and then making the right read every time. And I think that means so much to this team. And then you have Quickly, who obviously addresses the shooting and the pick and roll stuff. So I think with roles and definitions being clearer, I think continuity is going to be the most important thing. Like, the trade deadline's coming, so you still have a month. You have a month to kind of see how things go. So I wouldn't really pull the trigger on anything now or close to it. I would still give at minimum this month to ride it out and to see how this team does with some continuity, because the week 1 sample size is fantastic. So I wouldn't want to stop there.
Yeah, I can see that too. Like, honestly, like right now with this team, it's just kind of them getting their footing them underneath, like just seeing who does what exactly and like who fits which role. Like, I feel like Boucher too, like we are kind of like harping on him earlier this week, but then he came out against the Warriors and showed what he could really do. So I feel like it's just as this team progresses, maybe the guys will get more comfortable. RJ Barrett, he's not playing under the bright lights of New York anymore. He's home now. He's more relaxed. We're playing to his strengths instead of him playing with guys like Julius Randle, Jalen Brunson, and being a third or fourth even option sometimes, right? So we could see what he's clearly capable of right now. We didn't have a guy before that was taking it to the rim strong like this, getting the and ones, not being afraid to play in the paint like that before. So it's just been exciting to see. Like, I'm just excited to finally watch this Raptors team. Before it was just kind of sad to watch this team missing shots, losing these games. But now it's like the spicy barbecue era is here. I'm ready to see what we can do.
Yeah, having a vision is always so important, or seeing what the plan is for a team. You know what this core is now and what they're trying to build around. And like I remember I mentioned talking about this somewhere else, where like the Raptors lost that Sacramento game, and almost everyone was positive coming out of it. They were down big after the first half, but they fought back into the game. And pre-trade, people probably weren't commending that comeback. They would have called it a fake comeback because that's what the Raptors do, and it would still have been an L. But instead now you're like, you know what? This team fought, they didn't give up, and you see a direction, and they're kind of building towards something. The L isn't just an L. I talked about this a couple episodes ago, where it's wins and lessons. And that L against Sacramento was a lesson in how the team can develop and continue growing, especially in crunch time situations where they saw they made a couple mistakes there. So I think that has been really important for this team to have this vision, and for the fan base to have a bit of an idea of where this team is kind of building towards. And I know you mentioned how we had harped on Chris Boucher in the past. Another person we had harped on, or at least I harped on, was Darko Rajakovic. And I was critical of him, especially after those 2 games against Boston and Detroit. I didn't understand the game plan against Boston, and against Detroit, I thought there were some mistakes there late, like keeping the Scotty and Pascal off the floor for a while. Jalen McDaniels was in there for a bit too long before he yanked him, stuff like that. And I needed to see more adjustments from Darko Rajakovic at a faster pace. And to his credit, he's done that with these new players here. And maybe all it took was having a roster that made more sense. And honestly, it could have been that simple. But having RJ and Emmanuel Quickly, he's made some really good decisions around them. He's seen, like, RJ, first game, he was fantastic. Second game, he started having a bit of that tunnel vision towards the end against Memphis. Quickly yanked him, put in a Dennis Schroeder in his place instead. And we saw the dividends of that. Schroeder was really great off the bench and was doing a good job. So Darko Rajakovic deserves credit there. He's been really good out of timeout plays. He's been really good at calling timeouts with some of these early leads. He hasn't been afraid to be risky with this kind of stuff as well. He started Scotty as a point of attack defender, like I talked about in the Kings game, and then he takes him out in the second half and adjusts, puts him on Sabonis, lets Scotty roam around, and we saw that basically how they made that comeback. And then he did it against the Warriors as well. Scotty started on Steph. It was working a bit offensively, but defensively it wasn't looking all that great, even though Steph struggled. Switched it really quickly. And one of the coolest things I saw from Rajakovic to show that he's finally reading the game better is that RJ Barrett, I believe it was in the 3rd or 4th quarter, where he got out for a rest, and then that comeback started happening by the Warriors. RJ Barrett sat for like 2 minutes and then put him right back in the game, because Rajakovic knew RJ Barrett is the hot hand. He's playing well, and this is a guy who's reading this game and doing it well right now. So he didn't care about his rotations. He wasn't rigid in his play style or coaching or his game plan. He's like, you know what, RJ, you're playing well. Get back in the game. You had enough rest. That is somebody who's reading the game, and I think he deserves a ton of credit for that. I want to know if you had any thoughts on Rajakovic throughout all of this as well.
Yeah, it's been great. Like, just seeing even in the Cavs game, like some of the decisions he's been making it's been solid. Like just putting Scotty on when he was guarding Donovan Mitchell, for example, too. Like with the loss of OG, we lost our best defender, but I can see Scotty evolving into becoming our best defender. So doing things like that, giving Scotty the confidence to actually shut down a Donovan Mitchell, or even like you said, pulling RJ out when he had the tunnel vision and then bringing in Dennis, or keeping him in and not pulling a Steve Kerr with Kuminga the other day and keeping him in when we need needed him to do. So things like that, it's just maybe he needed the roster tweaks to make something happen. Maybe he needed more spacing with guys like Quickly. Maybe he needed the RJ Barrett to really get his game plan going. And so like if we make more tweaks in the future, it'll just continue to thrive. But from what I've seen right now, it's been impressive because before this, people were ready to like come down on Darko and say, "Oh, we
Yeah.
made the wrong choice. We made the wrong choice." But now we're seeing that with the right pieces around him, it's just like players too. With the right pieces around him, he's actually able to make things happen and run different lineups according to the games. Make adjustments on the fly, and we're seeing
Mhm.
how smart of a coach and how good of a coach he can be.
Yeah, like we talked about it before when Darko Rakovic made that quote after the Jazz game when they blew a lead. He said, like, what do you guys want from me? I don't have Steph Curry on the bench. And I thought that was a bit of him standing up for himself, where
Mhm.
he's like, look, I can't really make adjustments here because I don't have a lot to work with, and
Mhm.
this roster doesn't really benefit me. So now he has a roster that fits his system, this point 0.5 offense a little bit more. I know we haven't heard that term in a while, point 0.5 offense. But he's been doing it. This team moves the ball extremely well, and now it's paying off in this system. So I think that's really positive for him. You mentioned defensively and what Scotty can become, and I wanted to go back to that because this team has looked really good. Offensively, they've been great for the most part. They sputtered a little bit here and there, but in all these games, pretty much, they've had pretty significant leads, and at one point or another, those leads have gotten cut down. And maybe it's just as simple as the absence of OG not being there and them getting used to it. But I'm curious to know from you: are you concerned by that at all? These leads being blown so often?
I don't think so personally. It's like kind of like Samson tweeted out the other day, like when Donovan Mitchell was cooking us or Sabonis was going off. This is the OG tax. Like this is
Yeah.
what we lost when OG can't give up. And I can see guys like RJ Barrett, guys like Scotty Barnes, they can evolve into being better defenders, if not already. I honestly think Scotty can be one of the best defenders in the NBA with his size, with his wingspan, with his potential. Even when they put him on Donovan Mitchell in the clutch that game, he was able to poke the ball loose. He was able to stop like Donovan Mitchell. So the potential is there. I feel like right now, cutting like blowing leads, I'm not going to be too concerned about right now. Too, with the group now just got together. It's the first week. We're still gelling. We're still thriving. We want to know who can put the gas on, who can what times to take your foot off the gas. So still figuring it out. Like again, off the first week, I'm not going to be too concerned. If it becomes a reoccurring issue, like a month in where we're still cutting, like, we're blowing leads and then losing the game, then I'll say, okay, we got a problem here. We need a closer. We need someone to kind of stop the leaks. But right now, I'm not too worried.
Yeah, that's fair enough. And I think you raise a good point there that like it is still so early. We're so excited by it all. But it's only been 1 week. This is our first week of covering this new look Raptors team, the spicy barbecue era that we keep talking about, which is again an awesome nickname. But like there's still so much to learn about this, how rotations are gonna look. Can a guy like Chris Boucher and Dennis keep this up consistently off the bench? We've seen Jonte Porter a little bit, which I think we'll talk about, and what he's gonna be on this team in terms of like long term and short term. And I think there's just a lot to still learn, which makes it so exciting because again, there's newness, there's positivity, there's vision, there's perspective and fresh outlook, which is really awesome to see. So we're gonna only get more answers as we go along. But for now, it's a really good start. Again, 3-1, probably one of the best weeks this whole season for the Raptors. So there's a lot to look forward to. But that pretty much wraps it up for our schedule recap and our thoughts around that. And now we're gonna move it on to Kyle's power rankings.
All right, so now this week we got our power rankings. We're coming back after a little bit of a break, just seeing how the roster got shaken up. I need some time to kind of put the pieces together, remove some places. So for this week, for the first week of the new year, at number 1, we have Pascal Siakam. Number 2, Scotty Barnes. Number 3, Emmanuel Quickly. Number 4, RJ Barrett. Number 5, Jakob Poeltl. Number 6, Dennis Schroeder. 7, Chris Boucher. 8, Jonte Porter. 9, Gary Trent Jr., 10, Otto Porter Jr., 11, Grady Dick, 12, Jalen McDaniels, 13, Garrett Temple, 14, Thaddeus Young, and 15, Christian Koloko. So, Zulfi, you got any critiques for me? Any notes? Anything for me?
I always have critiques for you. You already know that. But I'll get to like some of the question marks around it later on. But obviously, we do have to start at the top.
Okay.
Pascal Siakam being bumped into number 1 spot. I don't doubt it or deny it because he's been awesome this time. Scotty's been really good for the most part too. Aside from the last game against the Warriors, Pascal Siakam has been pretty consistent throughout all of this. And I think you're just learning how much Pascal Siakam can benefit from guys around him who can play up to his level, or at least space the floor out for him. But what I wanted to talk to you about is after seeing him succeed with these kind of players, after seeing him play so well, is I want us to kind of address some of these conversations that have been going around based on the idea of trading Pascal or extending him. I know you touched on it a little bit before, but we didn't really get a chance to talk about the craziness that happened before the Sacramento Kings game. you had I believe it was like 3 hours before tip off. And keep in mind, Masai Ujiri and Bobby Webster are on this road trip, so they were in Sacramento.
Yeah.
You get this Shams report that the Kings are now ramping up trade talks and are probably considered the favorite to land Pascal Siakam in a trade. And this is, again, right before the game is about to happen. Number one thought I felt really bad was Harrison Barnes about to get traded mid-game again. I didn't want that to happen to this guy a second time in his career, so I'm kind of glad it didn't. But then, like, not even a full 3 hours later, like 2 hours later, 2.5 hours later, you find out that the Kings and Raptors trade talks for Pascal Siakam are off. Like, they're done and the Kings have taken out of the conversation.
Yeah.
And then you go into this game, obviously it goes the way that it does. Really weird to think about it, but you're hearing, obviously, the Raptors are really entertaining conversations about trading Pascal Siakam. This mixed with the background of all this talk around the Warriors, about Kuminga and Moody and them being a possible targeted suitor as well. The fact that the Raptors haven't offered Pascal Siakam an extension throughout any of this, or at least reportedly they haven't as far as we know. So is the writing on the wall? Do you think that's the right idea? Like, what is your read around this whole Pascal Siakam situation? What do you think they should go?
Honestly, like, I don't mind going either direction. It just depends what we get back for him. Like, again, the Kings are out here. Whether the reports came out that they're offering us Harrison Barnes. I don't know who is in charge of that. I don't know what kind of disrespectful 2K trade they're going for, but that is not the wave. All right. So right now, I'm leaning. I mentioned it earlier too. I'm leaning on the fence of extending Siakam. Honestly, because I feel like a lot of these teams are lowballing us when it comes to Siakam. He is worth so much right now. He is all-star caliber, and they're not giving us all-star caliber trades. They're giving us below barrel trades. So if we can extend him for, let's say, like 3 to 4 years, keep this core going, make slight tweaks. Honestly, I'm not against running it back with Siakam because he's proven that when we bring in quality talent, Scotty's growing too. He's been playing incredibly well. Like, he started off the season kind of shaky, but now he's picked it up generally. And I've completely moved from the side of let's trade him, let's get him out of here, to we can build with him and Scotty. Him and Scotty can work. The only thing is that is bugging me is the age gap between him and Scotty is about 7-ish years, and he's now entering his 30s. So we might get at least 3 to 4 more years of prime Pascal before we start to notice a decline. So there has to be something done within these next like half a decade moves or something. So that's the only kind of concern I'd say where we should trade him to get more pieces and focus the build around Scotty. But right now, I don't mind it. He's playing great. I like how this team is moving, and if we get a few more pieces, I think we can get right back into the contending picture.
Yeah, I think the age gap part of it is interesting. There's been so much discourse back and forth. Do timelines and age matter? Some people have brought up the examples of, like, well, Tim Duncan and David Robinson had an age gap. Well, they're also both 2 of the top 50 players of all time, so that kind of helps you sometimes. But it is a valid point that age gaps don't always necessarily matter. But I think with your point is that, like, through this next contract, if Pascal were to get one, I don't think it would be much of an issue because he'd be able to still be at his peak towards that. It would obviously be if you're moving on with Pascal after that contract, there would be issues with it. And you brought up this point about, like, his value is really high. And I think in the sense that according to the market, based on who else is available, there's maybe like Zach LaVine is another guy who's been thrown around as a name out there. DeJounte Murray. Pascal Siakam has to be one of the more valuable names on the list available in terms of a possible trade deadline target. So his value is here in that sense. But he's still also an expiring deal, which brings a big hiccup to all of this. Because the reporting that today came out that the reason why Sacramento's deal was so underwhelming is because they weren't confident that they could extend Pascal Siakam. So for a 3-month rental, are they really going to give up a guy like Keegan Murray or some of their other young assets? Which I don't blame them for not doing that. So the expiring part of it is interesting, which is why I think this conversation has shifted towards let's extend him and let's like prolong this window of being able to deal him. But then the thing that comes out of that as well is like Pascal Siakam has seemed to make it clear that he doesn't want a shorter deal and he doesn't want to give the Raptors a home team discount, as is his right. He's an all-NBA player who, quite frankly, has been prioritized enough, and he's been such an underdog story, 27th overall pick. Like, this guy, go make your money. Like, you've earned it. So if he wants to make a full contract at a max rate, then by all means, that's your prerogative. But it doesn't seem like the Raptors want to give him that, which brings you back to this conundrum. Like, well, what is it? Because at the end of the day, literally the one thing you can't let happen is he walks away for nothing.
For free.
If he walks for free, it's an abject failure. So in order to avoid that, you have to like think of this as 2 ways. Either you pay up and then you figure out the problems financially later. You give him the max contract and then maybe you try trading him a year from now. Or when it gets dicey, you figure something else out. You have to move other players in that sense because Pascal Siakam's still good. Or you forget the sunk cost. You don't care about the fact that you're getting less value that he's expiring, and you just move on and start anew. Like, those are your 2 options. over here when it comes to Pascal Siakam. And I think a lot of people are starting to lean towards the option of extending him and kind of prolonging this window because you've seen how well they are. But I think it's clear. Like, there's two sides to it, and I don't think there needs to be this middle ground of like, can we give him 3 years? Can we convince Pascal to take a discount? Can we try to fleece teams into giving us more on this expiring deal? Those things are just like delaying the inevitable, because I don't think either of those are going to happen. You either take a deal that's worth less, or you give him the max money and then you go from there. So I think that's where he's at in that situation.
It's a great point too, because I was bringing this up to one of my friends as well. Like, we have to take into consideration, say we don't trade him, but his name has been in all of these trade talks. Like, at what point does Pascal think to himself, like, I can control my future and I can control where I want to go? You know, like, I don't have to resign here. So if the Raptors need to play their cards very, very carefully when it comes to the situation, because if his name keeps appearing in trade talks, he's gonna be insulted. Like, players like get insulted, like they do feel ways about things like this, you know? So they have to either somehow make a trade without leaking it too much. And I know the Raptors are good on that front, or we find a way to extend him, because that is a real possibility where he's just like, I control my own destiny. I get the money I want to get, and I'll go where I want to go at this point, you know, instead of worrying about where I'm going to be potentially shipped off to, you know? So that is something we also have to consider.
Yeah, at the end of the day, money talks, but he may not even want the money from the Raptors if they're not treating him properly. And so far, all the reporting has been the Raptors have really not prioritized Pascal Siakam coming into this year, coming into this extension eligible season. There was reporting from Josh Lewenberg, this idea that the Raptors cut off communication with Pascal coming into this season, to the point where Pascal wasn't sure if he was being punished for what happened in the play-in game last season and stuff like that. Like, that is not a good look.
Yeah.
To the point where your all NBA player is having to feel like maybe he's being punished, that is concerning. So Raptors, if you're not sure about, if you don't want to get fleeced, I guess, or you don't want to give up less value in a Pascal trade, there is one option here, or at least one that makes good sense. Extend the man, give him his money, and then move on from there. But I think that pretty much covers the Pascal Siakam part of it all. He's been balling. This new core with him does look good, so it's hopefully we can see a bit more of it and see where it goes. Obviously, by going to number 1, Scotty Barnes drops down to number 2. And my main thing I want to talk about with him is that, like, we've seen since the absence of OG Anunoby, he's been asked to do a lot more defensively. You talked about it too, about what he's doing, and I've mentioned it as well. Like, he's being asked to be more of a point attack defender, being around the perimeter a lot more. It means he has to guard like smaller, faster guards. And Scotty Barnes is a great defender. He can really move his feet, but he's in a 6'10" frame. That is not easy for a guy like that to have to guard a De'Aaron Fox, one of the fastest players in the league, a Donovan Mitchell, Steph Curry on a night-to-night basis. And the first couple of games were awesome. This last game, he struggled, and maybe it's an off night, but some people are also concerned that this is going to like lead to fatigue for him overall. His offensive game is going to take a step back because he has to do so much defensively. And even when he is inside the paint, being a defender, like locking in, he has to play help so much, and he's great at it. He can run to the three-point line and block shots there. He can help inside, get an insane block against a bonus in the Sacramento Kings game. But, like, you're asking a lot from him defensively now. Are you concerned by that at all in terms of how that's going to affect him long-term?
I think a little concern is there because, again, remember, he's taking the leap from last year to this year in terms of production-wise and being the guy on the team. So not only is he dealing with being one of the number 1 scoring options on the team, he's probably, after OG left, he's probably one of our main defensive options as well, too. And we've seen players that are top 3 defenders in the league, Kawhi Leonard, you know, when he in this stage of his career, he can't do it both anymore because it takes too much of a demanding load on him to play both offense and defense. So he's had to kind of slack on defense to play the offense. We've seen LeBron before coast on defense a bit to be able to carry the team on offense. So it's something Scotty's going to probably have to learn to manage. But, you know, if they do put the right pieces around him to help him with that defense, this is something we're going to have to worry less and less about too. So again, with guys like RJ Barrett, Emmanuel Quickley, Jacopoto, that's becoming a new engine for the team as well too. It takes a lot of the pressure off Scotty, but when it comes to the one-on-one defense, I think he can handle it. It's just like a learning curve with him right now because he's going from just having that year last year to this big jump this year. So I think it's just a little bit of a paradigm shift for him, and once he gets used to it this season, it won't be too much of a problem. And when we do put the right pieces around him, we won't have to worry too much about fatigue on defense as well.
Yeah, hopefully just over time, once this team starts gelling more, he doesn't have to take such a load defensively, and then this team can kind of do a bit more. I think a lot of it's going to help once Quickley gets more comfortable defensively. He can take some of those assignments because I think he does have the ability to do it in the right situations. Dennis Schroeder has been awesome in those situations as well, so I think he can take some of that. And speaking of Dennis Schroeder, I want to get to him next. You have him at 6 here. I'm surprised he's not higher. This is the FIBA MVP floor general that we're seeing out here for the Raptors now. He's coming off the bench. His role looks much simpler. He's able to kind of lead the bench offense, spark the team. And then he's been there in some closing situations as well because he's just heady, he's smart, he's doing the right thing most of the time. And again, like when I mentioned with a clear roster construction, he doesn't seem like he has his need to do more than he is now. He fits so much better in this role. So I'm curious why he wasn't higher or why you put him where you did.
This is not even like not even trying to like diss Dennis Schroeder or anything. Like I'm loving his game right now. He is thriving off the bench. So for me, it was kind of just like between him and Jakob. But when Jakob came in that first game off the trade too, like this whole week, it's like he turned into Will Chamberlain or something. I don't know what it is.
Defensively, he's been crazy.
He's been amazing. He's been hustling for boards. He hasn't given up. He's had that energy. Like something new just got sparked into him, and it really impressed me because it made all the difference. Like especially in that Grizzlies game guarding JJJ. Like all the difference was made to it. Dennis, like no slack on his game, but when it comes to guys like Emmanuel Quickly, RJ Barrett, like RJ the other day, 37 points, Emmanuel Quickly, immediate impact on the team. You could see it right there, just sparked a new morale into the team, hitting the three. So it's kind of hard for me to put him over these guys, especially considering how much of an impact they have on the team. But that's no shot at Dennis too. He's commanding that bench unit. He's leading the bench unit. We've needed him in certain situations. So with these a few players, like I feel like the only one I could possibly have switched him with was maybe Jakob. Maybe I would have done him with RJ, but when RJ came out against the Warriors like that the other day, it just kind of propelled him to the top. So right now, maybe we'll see going on next week, but right now, just 6 is like the best I could put him at.
Yeah, fair enough. I just feel like it was a good opportunity to give Dennis some love. And I just want to say, how nice is it for this Raptors team to have some guard depth now that they can switch in and out? Again, RJ is having an off night. All right, we'll get Dennis in there, having a veteran in there who can play in these closing minutes instead. And then vice versa. RJ is going off. We're going to have him in there. Maybe Quickly can sit because he's not playing well one night. You have Gary Trent Jr. If he's popping off one game, he can get in there as well. So I think just having that ability to rotate through these guys is so helpful for this Raptors team. And they haven't had that in a while. And I want to get to the bigs now. You have Jakob Poeltl. Obviously, after this trade, no more Precious Achiuwa, so you're pretty thin up front. Jontay Porter, who's a two-way for the Raptors. He's now up with the big league team, and he's been playing a little bit. He made his debut with the Raptors against Memphis. He looked decent, played around 7 minutes there. Against Sacramento, he had 10 points, which was awesome. Golden State cooled down a bit offensively, but he's still doing his thing defensively. And then you have Chris Boucher, who's been pretty awesome throughout the stretch as well since the new guys have gotten here. I'm curious to know from you, like, what your thoughts have been about this big man rotation to this point.
It's been solid, like Chris Boucher has really impressed me this last week. Like I feel like his name too was starting to come up in the chopping block, but with that Warriors game, he just showed out and he showed what he was able to do. With Jontay Porter immediately, that first game they subbed him in for 7 minutes. Like he didn't score, but his defense was literally incredible. When he managed to contest all of Ja's drives to the rim too, even though Ja was still scoring layups over him. He managed to highly contested shots without fouling him. Like Ja had to perform acts of like miracles to make those go in. So Jontay Porter's energy too was something I just loved immediately too. Even though he didn't score or he didn't like impact the game on the offensive end, his defense just made so much more. So having that depth right there, having to be able to go to a guy like Jontay and put him into the game, I'm so excited to see what more can happen from him. And I feel like with Chris Boucher going forward too, I feel like there might be less pressure with him to perform too now that Precious is gone. There's more of a role for him to do things with. So like with the Warriors game too, we see what he's capable of. So I feel like right now I might just be being too optimistic, but it's kind of up from here with these guys. Jontay Porter, he's going to continue to show us what he can do, and he's continued to impress.
Yeah, I think you mentioned with Jontay Porter. The thing I loved is that he didn't come out here, and it's very easy for a guy who's playing on a two-way contract. He gets his first opportunities for NBA minutes with this team, and he's going to be like, you know what, I'm going to chuck up every shot. I'm going to do all this crazy stuff to try to impress. But no, he's played his role. He's been a very willing passer, and he's gotten onto the floor and earned his minutes being sound defensively. Like you mentioned against Ja and then Jaren Jackson Jr. in that game. He struggled a little bit rebounding the ball, but he's been well overall, and he's been tested quite a bit. He had to guard Domantas Sabonis, and there was a play in the third quarter against the Kings where he just went chest to chest with Sabonis, played really good defense, the ball spit out, and then it ended up in Trey Lyles 3 for the Kings, but he still caused Sabonis to lose the ball there, and I think that's super impressive from a guy trying to make a name for himself. And then offensively, the shot hasn't fallen consistently, but he hit 2 threes against the Kings, and my goodness, does the no hesitation jumper just run in the Porter family. Yeah, MPJ takes every shot he sees. Every shot's a good shot. And it looks like his brother, Jonte, has the same trait in him. And I love that. I love that he's willing to take the shot. It spaces the floor more. And once it starts falling, it will be good.
Mhm.
When he came into the 905 season in the G League, he was shooting around 28%, which wasn't that great, but it was just a little stint to start the year. The season prior in the G League, he was shooting around 40% from three. So there's a bit of a sample there of success. And then when he came to the 905, he was on fire from downtown. He was shooting like up to 70% at one point from three. So if he can keep anything close to that or get even consistent from that deep shot, we know he's willing to take it, which is awesome to see. So I think Jonte Porter is going to be great in this rotation. And I just also want to mention, Jonte Porter and Chris Boucher, you are about to be tested. You're about to have an opportunity because at the time of this recording, it's being reported that Jakob Poeltl will not be playing against the Lakers on Tuesday because if you saw the Warriors game, he suffered an ankle injury. He rolled it, and now it appears he sprained it. He did play through the rest of the game, and he played through it, showing some toughness, but clearly it's bothering him now to the point where he has to be out. So yeah, Chris Boucher and Jonte Porter, you will get minutes in this game, quite a bit of minutes, because you will be guarding Anthony Davis. So this is your test. Not all opportunities come fairly. This isn't a fair opportunity for you guys having to guard Anthony Davis, but hell, it is an opportunity. So I'm excited to see what these guys can do. I wanted to know from you, Kyle, did you have any other thoughts on any of this? Any other players you wanted to talk about?
Well, first, like Jonte and them are gonna have to guard the worst version of Anthony Davis when Anthony Davis comes off a mid game. It's like he'll have an incredible game, then a mid game, and then he'll turn into a Chamberlain. So they're gonna have to guard like the best version of Anthony Davis. But one thing, real quick, is I'm gonna have to address the Gary Trent Jr. hate, bro. Because that quick reaction I did, oh man, people were like, "Why?"
People were at you. You gave him an F,
giving him an
fans
F.
were upset,
bro. I don't know what this is. Like, okay, like yo, Gary Trent can be such a great player. I saw this whole compilation on Twitter was like, what happened to the player I love after that game, and he was hitting step back threes. He was driving to the rim. We saw flashes of that in the Warriors game too. Like, we saw what he can be, but when you're playing 21 minutes and you're scoring 5 points against the Grizzlies and you're either not being aggressive at all or you're just missing shots, it's going to start adding up, like, as the games keep going on too. And for me, at least, I'm not going to sit here and like pat you on the back for making a layup or like just making 4 points a game when you're getting the minutes you are. Like, if you're a Jonte Porter and you're getting 6-7 minutes and you're scoring 4 points, okay, you did what you could in the time given. But when you're getting heavy minutes like Gary and you're scoring 0 points or 5 points or 4 points, then I'm going to come down on you hard, because again, you're playing close to starter minutes and you're one of the guys we turn to when we need that 3 and D. And if you're not providing that, then it's like, what can you really do? Like, can you only be effective with the starters? But that's not always going to be the case. So that's why I kind of come down hard on Gary, because I hold him to a standard of being close to a starter like player, or even a starter like player, because I'm not going to just sit here and settle for something like Grady Dick, because we're not hard on Grady Dick because, again, he's a rookie, he's struggling, whatever. I'm not going to hold you to those standards. I'm holding to what I saw you do last year, 17 point something points, but now you're averaging only 11. I don't know if it's a shift in role. I don't know if he doesn't know what role he's fitting into. I don't know if he's struggling coming off the bench. But right now, I'm going to call it as I see it during game by game. And you know what? Against the Warriors, he did have 14 points, which was great. But I need to see that consistently. You know, I'm not asking you to shoot 100%. I'm not asking you to shoot 20 points a game. I'm just asking you to just be consistent. That's all I'm asking.
That's going to really defend himself here.
And I'll praise him, bro. Like, I can't.
Yeah, I think the important thing is that context matters in this situation. With Gary Trent Jr., people need to remember that, like, last season, he was one of the de facto scorers on this team. He was probably the best just shot creator, or being able to create his own shot, the best on this team to be able to do that. So for him to just kind of lose a lot of that touch in a contract year. So I think that's another thing. You have a higher standard for a guy in a contract year because you know he's playing for his next dollar bills. So the fact that he hasn't been able to do that consistently has been a little disappointing. And it's also what his role is on this team. Like we just mentioned, he's there to score. He's not there to be a Jonte Porter. He's not there to set screens and be scrappy and get boards. Like, no, when he's put into that game, it's to go get a bucket. So when he's not doing that, it is unfortunate to see, and you kind of hope that he can get that. I know I talked about this in the past. We don't know what's going on. Maybe there is something. Maybe there's not. Maybe the plantar fasciitis is still bugging him. Maybe it's not. We don't really know. All we can do and all we can evaluate is what's happening on the court. And on the court, he's not consistent. But so far, the early returns from this new era and this new role that he has with Quickley and RJ Barrett being there is generally positive. He's doing better for the most part. So that is good to see. So hopefully that can keep up with him. So I think that pretty much wraps it for my thoughts on the power rankings. And I think I'm good to move on. What about you, Kyle?
Yeah, we're all good to go.
All right, let's move on to our next segment then.
All right, and welcome to Betting Ahead, powered by FanDuel. So this is where we look for the schedule ahead. You guys know how it rolls, the schedule this week, and I give you my parlay, or we're doing the 10-week 10K challenge. So before I take a look at the schedule for this upcoming week, last week the Raptors had the Cavs, the Grizzlies, the Kings, and the Warriors. And I told you the Raptors would go 0-4 simply just because I thought they would be figuring out the team. I thought they'd be figuring out the lineups because they were struggling before. Well, they made me eat my words, and they took down the Cavs, Grizzlies, and Warriors, and only lost against the Kings. So that just goes to show you. Anyways, on to the money lines for this week. The Raptors have the Lakers, the Clippers, and the Jazz. So with the way the Raptors have been rolling, I think they can take an advantage of a disgruntled Lakers and get the W, especially with the Lakers. They're suffering right now with lineup issues. They're having problems with Darvin Ham. Yes, they did get the win against the Clippers, but it was barely by a meager victory. So I think with the momentum going for the Raptors, they would be able to get the W. The Clippers might prove too much with guys like Kawhi and PG helping to slow down guys like Scotty and Siakam. I would suggest taking the money line taking the money line for the Clippers. Finally, with the Jazz, with the additions of IQ and RJ, this should help us easily cruise past the Jazz. I don't see us facing any problems. Now let's get to our Raptors 10K 10-week challenge. So we lost this challenge a few weeks back, and basically I'm going to be starting up again. So if you're confused and you're new to what this challenge is exactly, this is my version of a 10-day 10K challenge. You start and only bet $10 once. You keep doubling your winnings each week until we hit $10,000, hopefully. So to start off this week, I would do these legs, and I'm choosing to do the Lakers because I feel like even though the Raptors probably will get the dub, this is going to be a highly competitive game. So consider a lot of high scoring, a lot of our players doing their thing. So I would do Scotty 20 plus points, Quickly 15 plus points, Quickly 2 plus threes, and other legs you can consider to do would be Scotty over 1.5 threes and Scotty 6 plus rebounds. I know Scotty has been getting a bit under 6 plus rebounds the last few games, but with Jakob out on injury and now, I think his rebounds will go up. So if you're feeling spicy, you can even do Scotty 8 plus rebounds. And there you have it. This was Betting Ahead, powered by FanDuel.
All right, thank you, Kyle. Now that does it for us. We want to thank everyone for following along. We hope you're caught up on all things Raptors. Now, if you liked our content and want more, you can check everything out in the description or on RaptorsRepublic.com. Better yet, sign up for a subscription. It's $6 a month. You get our content and exclusive work from people like Louis Satzman and Samson Folk. Please like, share, subscribe, the usual stuff. But even more, leave us some feedback. We're still trying to grow and get better with this. So please let us know what you think. But that does it for us here. I'm Zulfi Sheikh, joined by Kyle Ramnarine on the Raptors Republic Network. And we'll be back next week to run it back.